Good business continuity management starts always, of course, with good business continuity planning. But what does it mean to plan for this situation? Obviously, you have to start with scenarios that may impact your business. So you can start with known incidents, something that you have heard, seen in the media, cyber incidents, but also not limited to cyber only, of course. Any other emergency situation that require you to change the way you do business usually. Any other disruptive event, even natural disasters, or whatever applies to your location geographically or even politically or even from an economical point of view. So that is usually the starting point that you discover. I would say discover because it always is a guesstimate. What kind of threats are you facing, and plan out properly where you would determine a real crisis and disaster, and where it is basically just, I would say, normal disruption, which can happen anytime. I mean, a power outage, for example, is very different than, let's say, flooding, which does not happen once in 5 or 10 years. So you may have to have different plans for that, but it's of course always recommended to have certain overlap, that people don't get confused or wait for additional instructions, that they know when something happened that is not normal and the business will be disrupted, that they start following a certain procedure without waiting for meetings and decisions and say plan A, plan B, plan C, variation A. No, I mean, ideally you have some common denominator in this planning, and usually it's anyway the same case, that some IT part system is down and you can't do anything with it. And ideally, you have some kind of a natural fluent workaround. You shouldn't always like call out disaster and then basically change everything. As seamless as possible would be great, and that is usually to think, what other options do I have if this particular IT system is down? Of course, when there's a lot of them down and also critical essential infrastructure, let's say a corporate network or all the laptops not working, like in case of a ransomware, for example, then of course you have to really call out a crisis plan. But normally for other disruptions, if you have smooth workarounds, and be it manual, semi-manual, or any other solution, that would be good to have that like seamlessly in place. And this is something you can also exercise on a more frequent basis. I mean, normally annually is a good frequency to do these kind of exercises, but if you test different parts of systems being replaced by alternative functions, or even let's say you have an application running in your business environment, and if you can't use it, you use maybe a subscription software as a service, which is not reliable to run it like full-fledged all the time as your normal business backbone. But let's say if it's an interim period of a month or two, and you could go for it instead of having manual collection of data and a lot of human error, and you can run it from the internet, you can basically get any kind of devices. Even when your own devices are compromised, you can use mobile phones, or you can get laptops, spare laptops or rental laptops with totally different connection and nothing related to your normal network as usual. So therefore, this is good to have such solutions in place as a workaround. As I say, it's manual, semi-manual, or even another software as a service. That goes all into the plan. Of course, you have to lay out the threat. You have to decide what is the tipping point. So where do you need to call out crisis? Who do you need to rope into a call to basically decide on these kind of matters? Sometimes you should also consult legal department, because for some crises, when there's a data outage or system outage, data not available or data may be compromised, you may have to involve legal, because you have to inform regulatory bodies in that case. And yeah, so important is of course to respond properly to this incident. Then there's also a plan for that. But again, don't make too many different plans that you later have to puzzle in case of emergency situation, and you wonder What do I start with? What's the next step? We need to decide. Just keep it simple. Have one little agenda, and then call it what you want it. Crisis, disaster, incident. It doesn't matter as long as you follow it and it's easy to follow. Yeah. And there's of course a big question: should you have policies for that? Yeah. Or how much training you should conduct? It's always, these kind of things are always a big matter of communication. So if you keep people informed, I mean, just like think of all the fire extinguishers in your office, in the building. Yeah, everyone knows when fire, don't use the lift, use the stairs. Why? Because there's a fire drill at least once a year, and there's a lot of signage that you probably don't notice anymore because you see it every day, but it's still there, and then somehow the subconscious mind will react on it. Unfortunately, for disaster recovery exercise, you don't have that signage, you don't have these stickers in the pantry that remind you that you should follow a certain procedure, or you should, how to use a fire extinguisher, in that case like your cyber distinguisher. So all these things are not available, so therefore you have to run additional campaigns, and you have to find a good platform where you can constantly be present. But of course, consider, if something like this happened, let's say worst case ransomware, your computers are all down, you can't start, you can't see anything, your screen is blank, or asking you for ransom, nothing works. Where do you put these messages out? Where do you even put your business continuity plan? Where do you store it that you can actually access it? Is it on a mobile phone somewhere in the internet so that you can log in, or you have other, like a remote office that will send you over the information? Of course, if you have a wide clustered company, it's always good to have another office being your counterpart, because they can always access everything. They can send you screenshots or send you photos. They can do video call with you, and they can do that. But if you're on your own, if it's a smaller company, of course, you have to think about it. How do you make it accessible? Is it a printout that it's somewhere in the shelf? What if you can't access the office due to some disaster? Where can you keep these things accessible? And ideally, the better your awareness campaign, the less you have to have the document lying around, because everyone is aware what to do, because they've done it, they've trained this exercise, they rehearsed it, and it's just another exercise, but just that it's real. If you have to open the book and start reading in case of an emergency, obviously that's not the best choice, because then confusion comes up, and this thing is not really reality checked, and that will then cause a lot of problems. Yeah? So again, you can either, I mean, ideally you do both. Yeah, invest into a good plan, which is easy accessible, easy to remember, and easy to keep up to date and constantly tested and also refined with lessons learned. But also make your life easier, because the best plan helps nothing if you have to do a lot of things. I mean, the best plan usually fits on one page, but if you can't do that, start thinking of workarounds and isolated systems. Typical disaster recovery planning. So, good old days, you used to go to another offsite location, take out the dusty laptops with the latest image, hopefully, and then start working there. And you may not be able to bring the tape along with your data from yesterday, but at least you can get some tapes from the bank, which we usually did in the past, and restore those, so at least you have 1 week's old data and you can run it. And you're a bit off grid with this setup, so you're not crossing ways with your already compromised network and infrastructure from your actual office. That's what usually was done in disaster recovery. Nowadays, you don't have to make it so dramatic. As long as anyone has a mobile phone that can be wiped, or can use a spare phone or private phone, and the applications are available over internet, that is basically your alternative network. So no need this kind of disaster recovery corporate network mirror somewhere sitting around, but you can just use the internet for yourself, because usually the internet, I mean, okay, one of your disasters might be internet is down, but then manual workarounds, that's all I can recommend.